I'm the founder of The Catalyst. We boost the development of innovative and creative players at the crossing of science, technology, digital media, and creative content like film, TV, music and sound, design, a lot about VR, AR, XR, PR, etc. And there we are consulting companies in these fields. We are curating conferences and events in this field, and we represent a range of very talented speakers, and among them there is Klaus. We are very happy to have Klaus today. We want to, with this fast forward series, actually share the insights of our speakers and make sense of the situation we have. This is why we try also to recontextualize the know-how that they have in the context of today. This is why we have here, from streaming wars to COVID-19, the VOD'S contested futures. Just a couple of words about Klaus. I mean, a lot of you know Klaus already, obviously. He's a brilliant mind and one of the sharpest analysts of the European media landscape. And he's the founder and the managing director and partner at Gold Media, with an emphasis on forecasting, strategic business development, and private, market analysis, where he manages a wide portfolio of clients in the public and in the private sector, such as the EU, the ministries, regulators, association, and organization. He has a background in journalism, where his beat was, guess, media markets, and a distinguished academic career in media and communication. And he has a very clear-eyed views on shifting media landscapes in Germany, Europe, and beyond. So in this presentation, Klaus will share his insight into what the future holds for the streaming market in the EU and globally, based on data gathered in research, but also through Gold Media's own surveys. We will take a closer look and we ask, where is the streaming video ecosystem at today? And where is it heading to? Klaus, please.
Well, thank you very much, AC. That was a nice introduction. Hello, everybody. I will share my screen now for you so that you can see what I want to talk about. I hope you can all see that properly. This is a 10-minute ride through the European media landscape and the video landscape. Actually, I derive most of my points from our own survey system called VOD ratings. We are currently tracking the situation in these 5 markets and have a very recent and regular overview of what's happening in these markets. So if you want to know a little bit more about that, go to VOD-ratings.com. So going back some 10 years, there was the then CEO of Time Warner, Jeff Bewkes, and he was asked whether he thought that Netflix was a threat to existing media companies as they have shifted from DVD rental to streaming. And he said, it's a little bit like the Albanian army is going to take over the world, so I don't think so. Actually, that triggered the CEO of Netflix to order 120 army hats from the Albanian army for his own management team and as his company for the next meeting. And he made them run a whole weekend around with these Albanian army caps. And I don't know whether it's due to that point, but we are now in a time called the streaming wars. And maybe it's already beyond the wars. Maybe it's an even stronger situation now. I mean, in the Corona times, Netflix and Amazon have been asked, and Disney have been asked to reduce the quality of their streaming in order to save bandwidth for other communication needs in Europe. So there's obviously a strong impulse from video streaming going into the European networks. So let's talk about the video landscape beyond stream wars discussions. We are now in another time. Actually, the time is very fastly moving forward. We have a lot of starts of new platforms in not only in Germany, but Apple TV launched in November. Amazon announced that it's going to start an advertising finance VOD platform called IMDb TV. Disney started in March, Quibi started in April, the first big mobile VOD service, and there's more to come, like HBO Max and Peacock, which is going to enter the European market sooner or later as well. So we have a very strong competition, and actually the competition is not ending. I think we will see that growing. For the choice for consumers is significant. And in my point of view, not all of these platforms are going to succeed, but maybe sooner or later, one or the other will join forces and save some spendings. Before that all started, in December 2019, we asked UK and German VOD users whether they are willing to subscribe to more than 2 pay streaming services. And the interesting point was that, okay, almost 50% then said they only want to subscribe to 2. 25% said they could imagine to subscribe to 3 or more. And the fun fact here is that already on average, VOD subscribers in Germany and in UK have about 2 services subscribed, as they maybe take Netflix, and they also have already an Amazon Prime account, so the video service comes along with the cheap parcels. On average, UK and German users are willing to pay about 20 euros. So that also shows that there is a huge budget still available for maybe for more than 2 or 3 services. As you can see here, again, 25% are willing to spend more than 20 euros per month on pay services. And the impact of Disney Plus on the markets was really impressive. In the UK, after only 1 month, Disney reached the number 4 of the most used streaming services, and that went pretty well, I have to say. And even faster was Disney Plus in Germany, where they gained after only 1 week the number 4 position. And I bet this is not going to stop. They had a very smart introduction policy and joined forces, for example, with Deutsche Telekom, so that you could subscribe to Disney Plus on a free base for the first time being, and that really increased their impact to the market. So that really is a success, and one of the main or key drivers was, once again, we're talking about streaming wars, the Star Wars sequel, The Mandalorian, which after 1 week in Germany jumped to number 8 of the streaming charts. So it's not only the name Disney, but also their new content, attractive new content, which gains momentum and obviously triggers the interest of viewers. So an important point I want to make is the differentiation between subscription and usage. We have 26 million subscriptions. As I said, on average, people have 2 services or 2.2 services in Germany subscribed to. So there are only 13 million subscribers. Very simple. Daddy or mommy has a subscription and the family uses it. So that accounts to about 27 million daily viewers, but there are more than 40 million people in Germany alone with access to VOD services. That means half of the German population can watch it. Why is that so? Because all the services are pretty big in terms of password sharing. Netflix allowed 4 people to use 1 account, and on average that accounts to about 2.8 users per account. I mean, this is another great possibility for growth for Netflix and Prime Video, as they might reduce the number of allowed account users in the future to gain more subscribers. But actually that helped them very much to enter the markets and grow significantly over time. So as I said, there is a differentiation between subscription and usage. And on the subscription side, Prime Video, Amazon services, is the biggest in Germany, as they had so many Prime parcel users, and Netflix has only a third of the subscription market. But on the usage side, if you look at the time watched and spent on Netflix, it has a bigger market share of more than 50%. Prime Video has about 37%, and you can see here that as Maxdome has already finished their services last week, I think that's not going to stop, and they're going to take over the market very significantly already. They command more than 80% of the market share. So what are the viewers doing? And I think it's not only the service offering of the platforms, but it's more the viewers that are changing their habits rapidly. And I want to introduce you to that idea. I do that from the German market, but you can discuss that throughout the European situation, and you see it everywhere on a similar basis. So in a more or less advanced, in a less advanced society, you have a very different age group situation. So you have like a pyramid where it's going to go to the top very thin. We in Europe have more kind of I call that a Dönerspieß kind of age group distribution, because there are so many people above 50, 60 and 70 years, so that you have a very large overhead there and very few younger viewers. Therefore, linear television try to address the majority of these societies. So we have public broadcasters who have a general age of more than 60, average age of more than 60 of their viewers, and also the private stations tend to generate an average viewer of 50 or 55. SVOD viewers, subscription VOD viewers, are significantly younger, and you can see that from the age groups of the formats of the series that are shown, that it's SVOD is serving almost very significantly younger female viewers, but from what we can track now, the rest, the older viewers, are following. And over time, that changed quite rapidly. Actually, I've never seen such a fast change during the last 3 years. For now, we have already 14 to 29-year-olds who, on average, watch more than 2/3 of their overall video consumption on VOD services. That doesn't appear to be so big in the statistic, because if you look on the overall public, it's still the other way around. But this is mostly because the older age groups, the 50, the 60, the 70-year-olds, are so sticky and following their linear television programs. Nevertheless, the 30, 40, 50-year-olds are now, as we can see, following and trying to switch over to VOD. And I love to tell the story of my 83-year-old mother, who went to me and said, like, look, I'm so tired of linear television. I heard about this interesting content called Netflix. Like, how can I watch that? And so there's a very strong urge now and a strong move on the viewer side to change and move over to nonlinear video service. Is that only because the content is better or more interesting? Well, I mean, quality is a question of taste, and I much rather go for numbers. And what I found so amazing and so impressive is that in the last year, the US content providers invested more than $120 billion in video content. This is an amazing number, and this is really a really strong impulse, because if you put that into the numbers of scripted originals produced in the US, like 2018, you have an average amount of almost $30 million per series. And they had 500 of these series produced. So if you put that into perspective, like, for example, the Babylon Berlin series, which was produced by public broadcaster ARD and Sky jointly, and they were really proud about it, and it was really good. That is almost a similar kind of amount of money spent on this production. And the US are investing into 500 or maybe 600 or 700 series produced in 1 year. Why can they do that? Because they have global platforms which allow these content to be refinanced on a global scale with a direct access to consumers. And we not only see former players like Comcast or Viacom, but we also see many service offerings from Facebook or Google or AT&T or Netflix. So this amount of money spent on content is only to be refinanced on a global scale. And I think that will put the European content offerings into a stronger competition over time. At the same time, and these are figures from the UK, but that applies to the European situation. Similarly, on the same time, the ad revenues are falling over the cliff, actually, and we have a lot of changes over the last 20, 30 years. On every recession, advertising revenues went down 20 or 30%. But my guess is that we will see the advertising revenues to be collapsing down 50%. And that makes and puts the advertising revenues of linear television into a very big, deep, dark side of the financing issues. Now, last point, Corona. What happened to Corona, to the media usage during Corona times? Actually, we're tracking on our VOD ratings the growth of about 7%. This is not very much, actually. The linear television programs were very happy at the same time and reporting growth of about 10 or 15% in terms of viewership. And that's true because VOD services don't offer news and information, a lot of news and information services. So I think many older viewers and also the younger viewers flock to linear television to watch the news on Corona and get more information on the COVID pandemic situation. But also non-linear video service gained growth of 7%. And there were many different effects in that respect. It was not only Corona, but it was also the growth of Disney Plus, which triggered interest. And it was also Easter time where people stayed at home and watched more video for entertainment purposes as well. So it's not only Corona, but it was an aggregation of triggers that went to that effect. And if you look at it more deeply, what happened to the situation in the market, the lockdown, when it was proposed in the countries in Europe, it didn't have a strong effect on viewership. Actually, as you can see, my guess is that probably Easter and Disney Plus had a bigger effect on viewership growth, like in Spain, than anything else. On overall, in an overall perspective, the lockdown itself wasn't that big an issue. But what increased was the social distancing issue here. Families stayed at home, and we could track on our VOD ratings as much stronger co-viewership from 1.4 to 1.6 users in front of the screen. So these are the effects of Corona, and to make a long story short, I can see that more choice and service will lure the viewers to VOD. Currently, linear television may have a growth effect from the news interest of the viewership, but on the long run, my impression is that more and more viewers, and also the older viewers, are moving into the nonlinear realm, to the VOD services. Thank you very much for your attention.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Klaus. Actually, I have you can please don't forget to write your questions in the chat so that we can approach you, and then you can talk directly to Klaus. But I have a small question directly, because we were talking about the shift towards non-linear viewing among younger demographics. And you were evoking your mother, asking like, oh, how can I go to a Netflix, or how can I watch this? Do you think that we can expect, especially if we have more lockdowns with more waves of the virus, that do you think that VOD platforms can capitalize on this moment and also gain more viewing from older target groups?
Definitely. I mean, they have already gained new viewers or more users. And so my impression is that the need for further information services and further news on Corona will maybe die out. People are tired of hearing it again and again and again. But the need for entertainment will grow over time, especially if we have a new phase and new lockdowns, a new wave and lockdowns in Europe. So my guess is, yes, they will gain even more momentum over time.
Yeah. I think we have questions coming up, Joe.
Yeah, we have some great questions popping up in the chat. Firstly, from Josephine Kittner. Where do you see linear TV going in 5 years in Germany? Josephine, do you actually want to maybe ask this question yourself? Do you feel comfortable to turn your camera on and say hello? Or?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, great. We can hear you. Thanks so much.
Yeah, I actually have a couple of questions. So just thinking about which one to prioritize, because we don't have a lot of time. Maybe actually I'm more interested in my last two questions. So how do you think like the overall willingness to pay is going to develop? And then in Germany specifically, and then do you think there will be some sort of a pricing war between the large SVOD kind of like providers or not?
Yeah, I think all your questions are interesting. Actually, the linear television stations, I skipped that issue, are in a very strong dilemma because the viewers are moving to nonlinear services. They had to launch Join and TV Now, and they had to do it. Otherwise, they would have lost their viewers already. The problem is, if you look at the numbers of what you can gain from advertising revenues, it's a big problem, because from a normal viewer on a linear television station per month, you can generate about 10 or 13 euros. But from a video on demand viewer, on average, you generate about 1.5 euros. So actually, you have to advertise and try to make your viewers go into the nonlinear realm, but at the same time, you lose about 80% of your revenue potential. And that's a huge dilemma. And so this is probably not to be solved. And therefore, yes, I see that the Mediatheken platforms, like private platforms like Join or TV Now, will have to increase their paid subscription services. But the question is on what content. Because the quality of content and the attractiveness of production values from the US is much bigger probably than anything else. So therefore, RTL and ProSieben already announced that they want to move into the local content side. But this will attract viewers for sure, but it will never be as attractive as globally attractive content. So the third part, the sports issue, is another big point, because we see already that Amazon has now first gained the first Bundesliga game to be shown on Amazon Video, not only Amazon Audio. And we know that Netflix has already negotiated with Formula One racing. So there are many things going on in that market, and we will see who's going to win the next Bundesliga or soccer league rights in Europe. So the overall willingness to pay for content, I think it's growing. We asked the users, how much are you willing to pay? This is a very simple question, and everybody's not willing to pay a lot. There are more advanced ways to interview people about their willingness to pay, but what we can see is that already 50% of the population is willing to pay more than 20 euros. So I guess if the content is great and the service is right, people are altogether are paying more and more for subscription services. We have this in music, we have this in print, we have this in games, and the willingness to pay for subscription services is growing, definitely. Will there be a pricing war between Disney, Amazon, and Netflix? If they're smart, no. It's hard to compare, actually. I mean, Amazon is hiding its subscription price with the Prime service. Netflix has a clear price position, and Disney is clearly positioned underneath. The main question is what's happening with all the other services, with Quibi and Peacock and so forth. But what I can see is, my guess is that sooner or later we're going to see mixed positions or mixed business models where you have advertising on a subscription video platform, like already, for example, with Sky, you have a pay TV service and they show advertising as well. And my guess is that this will sooner or later happens because the pressure to become profitable is high. And so we will see, I guess, not a pricing war in the first place, but more of these kind of joint business models between advertising and subscription.
That's really interesting. Thank you so much, Josephine, for those great questions, and Klaus as well. Very interesting answers. We also have another question from Wendy Mitchell, which is about the breaking of theatrical windows, which has been quite an interesting development. Wendy, do you want to maybe switch your camera on and recap this question and also maybe explain the trolls case, which maybe not everyone knows?
I'm not camera ready, but I'll talk.
Voice is also great. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's been very interesting to see what's been going on. I think it's Universal that released Trolls World Tour. Instead of waiting for the theatrical release as planned, they put it out on premium VOD or EST. And Universal also did that with some films that it had in cinemas originally, like The Invisible Man. They then, when cinemas closed, moved those over. And some people have been quite excited and understanding about this move that they did. Some of the large cinema chains have not been quite so happy with this news. And I think it was AMC that said they're never going to play Universal films again. So there's been a little bit of a public spat. But yeah, I would just love to hear Klaus talk about, if you think these windows could be relaxed even when COVID times are over, and if that will just be for more independent films, which people seem to be much more lenient about. Yeah, and how that could impact the platforms if theatrical windows start to shift.
Thank you very much for this great question. Actually, I think the genie is out of the bottle now. I've been thinking about that for years. And it's such a waste of money to advertise for a film which is only shown in the cinemas, and all the people with small children who can't leave home, or it's raining and they want to stay at home, can't see the movie, and then 6 months later everybody has forgotten about the campaign and the movie has to be remarketed again. It doesn't really make sense, even from an economic point of view. It's very understandable that the theaters are angry and looking for revenge, but actually I don't think this is ever going to go back again, because we have on the one hand we have the platforms like Netflix and Amazon. They don't need any kind of movie release anymore. They can, but they don't have to. So why should the studios, for example, wait ages for a video to be recapitalized if it has to be shown in the movie theaters again? So I think we will see a huge struggle here between the movie owners and the studios who want to recapitalize their spendings on movies much faster. We have also the issue that more and more of video content is produced as a series and has more episodes, which you can't show in that way in a movie theater. So there's a huge split up going on, and as the movie theaters are currently suffering from coronavirus very strongly, I think they will not come back to the time that was before, because this genie is out of the bottle, and there will be a huge combination of releases, either on video or in the movie theaters, or jointly, or with other windowing times. But that will be a battle which will be interesting to follow now.
I think it will be also very interesting. Sorry, Wendy, thank you very much for your question, and glad to see you here. I would like to come back maybe to this production side. We have seen the film and the TV industry has been heavily impacted by the lockdowns, with the projects being stopped, postponed, or even cancelled. And we saw, on the other hand, that VOD and as well as linear TV was profiting from more users and consumptions by viewers as a result of the lockdowns. Do you think that global streaming giants like Netflix will survive all this better because they have more in their pocket, or do players like Disney Plus with a huge catalog, will it give to them a huge advantage for the continuation of these streaming wars?
Yes, I mean, Netflix has already announced to recap their production, and so they're still in spending mode as far as I can see, and so that issue will prevail in the respect that the local production side is under high pressure of even getting started again. Meanwhile, the big platforms can start their production again very quickly, as they were planning to do, because they have an urge for new content and a need for new content. And so you see that kind of spending habit going to raise over the next 1 or 2 years, I think, before then maybe the markets are clearing up. But yes.
When you said the local market, do you mean the European market or the German market? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the point is, if you spend like Netflix 15 billion on content, you can't do that only with people working in the US. You have to go global. So that's why they set up their production site in Madrid. That's why they're having local productions in all the European countries and triggering more. I mean, there was a huge euphoria on the German production houses when Netflix got started. Nevertheless, I mean, they spend a lot of money and decide very quickly and give new production houses the opportunity to produce something maybe very strange or very outstanding. But it's not that the entire European production industry is going to gain momentum from that, because it's maybe only 5 or 10 production houses that will get contracts from these platforms. So it's a nice impact and it's a nice opportunity, but it's not for everybody in the whole of Europe.
And do you think this European content quota of 30%, which has been made in place, do you think this will help the European industry actually?
Well, it's a tricky question because the question is what came first. As I said, Netflix and Amazon have to find good producers in the whole of Europe and worldwide. So more or less they will have some German or French or Spanish production in their library. But does it really matter? Because there's a series like Dark produced by a German production house, which was really successful in South America. And So it's not that important anymore for Netflix, whether it's German or French content. It's more important that the content altogether is successful globally. And therefore, we can have quotas like we want to, but if that's really affecting the industry, I mean, this is the idea from the political side, that this will support the industrial growth of film production in Europe. But from my memory, I see all these libraries where you have shows at night from 2 to 4, which were then addressing the quotas. This is not true anymore in nonlinear times, but you can have a lot of stuff on your platform which comes from a certain country and will never be watched. So the point is, I can have a quota of 80% of, say, maybe Transylvanian movies, but if the rest is some interesting international stuff, that will be watched. And we are in nonlinear times, so maybe that regulation has to be rethought.
We have talked about a lot of different streaming platforms. We haven't touched the ones like YouTube, TikTok, etc. How does this inform the strategy of the bigger giants, the category kings? Do you think they can compete somehow with these players, or how do you see the case here?
That's a great question, because that's what I'm thinking about all the time, because maybe there's already a younger target group than the ones who will turn 14 in the next 5 to 10 years, who wonder why anybody would waste so much time on binge watching 8 hours of a certain series, if you're used to watch 30-second videos. YouTube is addressing that kind of target group as well. TikTok is addressing this target group just wonderfully. And my point of view is, or my idea is, that in the future, Netflix and Amazon will come under pressure, like they're now putting linear television under pressure. But then there are so many old people who are now 30 or 40, and so little younger ones, that this will not impact the industry over a longer time. But this is only a guess. But I imagine that this will, in the long run, will put Amazon and Netflix under pressure, and Disney as well. But you could set up the other theory as well, and think about that TikTok will start long-form content. And what would happen then? I mean, YouTube is doing this spread already. Yeah, right. With TikTok hiring Disney executives.
Yeah, I was reading too.
I read that in the chat. This is actually the thing where all the theories are starting to combine here.
I have a last question, maybe, unless there is another one here. Okay, so you said the streaming wars continues. There are new entrants coming up. It's all super exciting. We're not finished with that. We don't know what happens with the virus. If we have more lockdown, there will be waves. It will be fascinating and super exciting. We will have to invite you again by the end of the year, that's for sure. Do you think that we see a trend also towards an increasing monopolization then? Do you think this will actually stabilize at some point? I mean, will this happen?
Yeah, definitely. Whenever there are new markets, you see a lot of contestants and a lot of players entering the market. And over time, that will reduce to some serious and bigger players. I mean, this is a market where you have to have deep pockets to enter. But as I showed in the start of my presentation, there are already 5 or 10, or if you want to, even more players offering their services. So that will shrink down. We will see mergers, we will see closures, we will see all that happening. And on a local scale, on a global scale, I think there will be companies seeking to join forces to save money. And this is the next phase of our streaming wars, I think.
It will be a great series. We want to watch the rest of this. We don't know how many episodes there are, but that's great. Probably the production is never going to finish on that one. Okay, if we don't have any other questions. Oh, see, we have another question here. Please, Philipp Kaiser.
A sneak peek on the current research topics. Oh, I could give you a 30-minute presentation on that, actually.
Yes, go on, please. We still have
no. That's a threat. Not. No, but actually, we're looking very seriously into the audio markets. So, I mean, this is also turning into nonlinear, and how will affect that? How will that affect the markets? We are looking at the cultural and creative industries on a larger scale, not only broadcast and video and nonlinear video, but also the other creative industries which are affected seriously by coronavirus. And besides that, we're researching a lot in nonlinear VOD and trying to consider which other countries we could cover with VOD ratings.
I see there. I think we use the chat now for applications, right? This is a job market now. This is great. Yeah, I see a great stuff also happening on the audio market. Definitely a lot of new services coming up, like nano podcasting. You know, like the Instagram of audio coming up. It's very interesting. A little bit like the TikTok for the streaming. Like as we can see in the podcasting segment, so that's really interesting.
And YouTube is also one of the biggest music and podcast players.
Absolutely.
And so we see that merger between audio and video here because it's only a question of bandwidth, basically.
Yeah.
And so it's all the segments are converging now.
Exactly. Well, that's.
And Philip, if you have an interest, send me a note on jobs@goldmedia.de.
Wonderful. Do we have anyone else wanted to ask something, say something? Otherwise, I would say a huge thank you to you, Klaus, and announce, because the next podcast next week will be also about streaming, but from a different angle, a different perspective. It will be a talk with our fantastic speaker also, Wirada Sukarit-Kool. She's the co-founder and CEO of the niche VOD platform Filmdo, based in London. And